What they talking about? They ain't talking about nothing. What they talking about? They ain't talking about nothing. What they talking about? They talking about nothing. Huh? They ain't talking about nothing.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Off-Season Deepinator channel. Our first segment, I would like to explain on some of the major NFL coaching changes going on around the league. Starting off with one of the most major NFL coaching changes being John Harbaugh going to the New York Giants after Brian Daboll getting fired and the interim coach now stepping away. It'll be John Harbaugh taking over for the New York Giants, and this is honestly a great move. Still one of the best head coaches in the league. Still, having a great tenure with the Ravens, winning a Super Bowl in 2013. And now he's going to a different organization with a lot of top prospects in, Jackson Dart and Abdul Carter. But he's still a very underrated head coach. Obviously, his most recent playoff success has been non-existent, I'd say, with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So now, with the fresh start, I believe he's gonna, make a couple of changes to this atmosphere, and it might be an uprise on this offensive side now with Malik Neighbors coming back off of a season-ending ACL injury, and you gotta expect a lot for next year with this team, especially what they're gonna do in the draft with a high draft pick. And obviously, with a high draft pick, you're gonna get one of the best guys in the league with the best head coach in the league. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what this team is going to do with him. Next, I want to talk about Kevin Stefanski going to the Atlanta Falcons. Stefanski hasn't had, a lot of success with the Browns, but that organization has been in shambles for recent years. Obviously, dating back to when Baker Mayfield first got, drafted there, and now he's with the Buccaneers, where he's already starting to have a nice little rivalry between the two with Stefanski and him. But other than that, though, Stefanski, I think he still has a lot to learn, a lot to grow on. Both now, he's dealing with quarterback situations. Obviously, the Browns, they're still unsure if Shedeur Sanders or Deshaun Watson will be the quarterback one for the team. And now we got Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins with a huge contract that really wasn't needed. I think it was a little bit too much for his standards, even though he's still aging and not really getting much better. And Michael Penix, the injury-prone quarterback, not really producing at the rate that the Falcons would want him to be. You got to think to yourself, ask Kevin Stefanski, are you going to be looking for another quarterback this draft? Are you going to be searching for key guys that can really elevate this offensive group? Because you have Bijan, who's a top 5 running back in this league, and you can't provide that man with any type of help. You're going to waste another running back's career. You got to look for somebody to throw the ball to, and if you're going to stick with Kirk Cousins, you got to give him some time in the pocket. Atlanta's offensive line is atrocious at many points, so expect a lot. Expect to see the Falcons possibly get a offensive tackle or a type of offensive lineman inside this NFL draft season. But yeah, I think Kevin Stefanski, he still has a lot to grow from and has a lot of nice rivalries between Baker Mayfield in the NFC South. So very excited to see that. And now I'd like to discuss about Robert Saleh going to the Tennessee Titans. Robert Saleh, a well-known defensive-minded coordinator and head coach, as he was able to produce generational talent in Sauce Gardner and Quentin Williams, which now relates to the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan. They were able to get to another Super Bowl, and now him going to the Tennessee Titans, where they have L'Jarius Sneed, a very young Tennessee player, and Hargrave, which is still a very underrated defensive lineman. So I'm very excited to see what he's going to do, especially on the offensive side with Cam Ward. Still a very blue chip developed player, if you can just get him the guys that he needs this draft or this offseason. So I'm very excited to see what he will do with this Tennessee Titans team. And now I want to talk about Jeff Hafley going to the Miami Dolphins. Jeff Hafley's only head coaching experience is not in the NFL, but in the college football world, where he coached for Boston College from 2020 to 2023. That's 4 seasons, and then recently going to the Green Bay Packers. I believe his first year, he didn't really do a very great job with the Green Bay Packers in the postseason, but he did decide to take a head coaching approach to the Miami Dolphins, who are struggling at the moment with uncertainty between their quarterback situation and them paying him that much money for no reason. And now you got, your best wide receiver in Tyreek Hill gone. You cut him and Bradley Chubb, who are both suffering from injuries. So I'm very, concerned on this Miami Dolphins team on what they will do around the end of the year. Other than that, though, a lot of defensive signings in this draft class, because this is a very deep DB room or cornerback room that he can really develop. So we got to see what happens. We have to see what happens with this signing. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about Mike McCarthy going to the Steelers. And Mike McCarthy, his only playoff success has been with the Green Bay Packers, obviously with Aaron Rodgers winning his first ever Super Bowl. And I'm still very concerned with the fact that he's still he's basically the same as Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, very successful head coach, one of the most winning and productive head coaches. Obviously going with a .500 score every single year when it really doesn't matter, because the guy, he really can't succeed in the postseason. We can say the same thing with Mike McCarthy, where he can win, but he can't go that deep into the playoffs. So the fans are kind of upset. I understand their frustration, but at the end of the day, it's still a winning coach, and with a new system and with Aaron Rodgers, expect a lot more from Aaron if he does come back. But if he doesn't, you just gotta hope and pray that you can find somebody in the draft that's worthy enough for you to have. And I'll do it for my head coaching segment. And now for our next segment, we'll be going into some of the new stadium designs and relocations. Starting off, I want to discuss the Bears moving to Indiana. I believe it's not a very good idea, considering that this team has history. They've been known around the league since the 90s and 80s. So it's very weird for them to leave such a prestigious city because of profit. Obviously, you want to have, new attractions, new attire, having concerts in the state of Indiana, where they basically have nothing but the Indiana Hoosiers. So I can understand that. Other than that, though, I don't think they really should have left. I think this team still has history, and possibly you could have just renovated the whole place entirely, but kept it in the same location. Next, I want to talk about the Bills and their new stadium, Highmark, still called Highmark, this year, doing the 30th in 2026, and still a very great design, as long with the Titans in 2027, the Stadium of the Future, Jaguars in 2028, the Cleveland Browns in 2029, and the Washington Commanders in 2030. All great stadiums. I believe my most favorite one will be the Cleveland Browns one. It's very deep underground. I like those type of stadiums. It's underneath the ground, less sunlight. Players are able to visually see, unlike what we see in AT&T Stadium for the Cowboys. But other than that, all great design. And I'll do it for my new stadium redesigns and locations, as we'll now get into some of the new contract restructuring and signing. Starting off with the most major one happening recently, being Patrick Mahomes' restructured contract, making the team save up to $43 million. They're still in cap debt, but it wasn't as much as it was before. Next up, I want to talk about some of the franchise tags, and I got two of them for today. I was recording on Wednesday, but I couldn't. I stayed up too late, and I had to go to sleep. And on Thursday, so I'm recording this now on Friday, where George Pickens recently just got franchise tagged, and Kyle Pitts. Both of them elite targets for the QBs. We're still unsure how the Falcons will deal with the quarterback situation. For all I know, is Kyle Pitts, a very underrated tight end. I know most people would like most tight ends to be a pass catcher. I like him as a run blocker. He's very dominant in that aspect. So give him time. Run block for Bijan. Excited for this next season for him to be available after the franchise tag, if they're gonna sign him to a new deal or not. Next up, I want to talk about George Pickens and his franchise tag up to $27 million. And George Pickens, a very underrated wide receiver, and a key reason on why the Cowboys were even in playoff contention to begin with. Very underrated wide receiver, having 1,429 yards and 9 touchdowns. Still a very great wide receiver after CeeDee Lamb getting hurt around the beginning of the season. So yeah, both of them great franchise tags, and I think they're going to be expecting some big contracts next year. My last thing I want to talk about for contract signings will be Javonte Williams signing a new deal with 3 years, $16 million each year. And for the running back that just came off from an injury with the Broncos. He's a very hard hitting running back and a very productive running back at that. 252 attempts for 1,201 yards and 11 touchdowns. He's still a very underrated running back, and a key reason why the Cowboys were ranked 9th in rushing yards this season. He was the sole factor in having half the amount of those yards, so I'm very glad to see him now step up after having kind of a down year with the Broncos and now getting traded to the Cowboys for some good capital. Expect him a lot to develop for the next couple of years, so I'm expecting him to really go next year with 1,500 yards, possibly around 15 touchdowns. I think that's my margin on Javonte Williams, unless he has like a bad year as usual. But I don't think this is a fluke year. I think this is a great year on Javonte Williams turning into an elite running back and moving up the charts. And I'll do it for my new contract restructuring and signings, as we'll now get into my final segment on the free agency top prospects, my 5 fantasy top prospects and where they will go. Obviously, the first one that came to mind for me was George Pickens, and he did get traded. Well, not traded. I'm sorry. He did get franchise tagged, and that was my main goal on him for free agency market. Still a very productive wide receiver, and still sole reason why the Cowboys were in playoff contention. And he's a great wide receiver 2, and if CeeDee Lamb was gone, he can also be a great wide receiver 1. Expect him next year to possibly sign a new deal with them. I don't think it'll be as much, but he's still very young, so they're going to give him a lot of money for him to make those type of plays on Sunday. Next up, I got Trey Hendrickson, the defensive tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals. He was originally injured. He only played 7 games this year, having 11 solo tackles with 4 sacks and 1 forced fumble. And at that age, he's very old. He's getting to that age where most defensive tackles, they start to slow down a lot, not have the explosive speed as they would have in their 25s, 26. Very great to see him available for next year, and I think he's going to be going to the Indianapolis Colts or the Chicago Bears, but I got him going to the Bears. The Bears need a defensive tackle, and I think he's a great prospect for the Bears to have, and it looked pretty cool to see him in a Bears uniform, so I got him going to the Chicago Bears. Next up I have is Alec Pierce from the Indianapolis Colts. 25 years old and had a great season of 1,003 yards with 6 touchdowns, 47 receptions. Josh Allen, obviously he's known for his deep balls. He can throw very far. And with the Bills in desperate need of a wide receiver, Alec Pierce can be that guy. He can be the DK Metcalf for this Bills team. So I got him going to the Bills. Next up I have is Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP from last season and Super Bowl champion. And I think, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Seahawks had a phenomenal run game with a 2-back nightmare in Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker, he's very young. Signing him to a new deal shouldn't really be an issue. I'd like to see, Kenneth Walker still be in a Seattle Seahawks uniform. So I got him re-signing with Seahawks. I don't think they're going to franchise tag him, but re-sign him. And last but not least, I have is Mike Evans from Tampa Bay, the wide receiver. And obviously, he was injured for the year, having 30 receptions for 368 yards and 3 touchdowns. He's still a very productive running wide receiver. Honestly, the most consistent wide receiver in the league, having 1,000 yards almost each year. Obviously, this year not having that benchmark. For him to still be at that caliber, almost having around 500 yards when he was injured, it's still kind of bizarre to me. So I got him going to the Ravens. The Ravens, they need a wide receiver 1 badly. Obviously, the 49ers do, but the 49ers, they can, they're in some cap hell right now, trying to sign new contract deals with their defense and offense. So I got him going to the Ravens. The Ravens, they can take the hit. They're in desperate need too because, Lamar Jackson, he's getting older. Derrick Henry, he's getting older. And, with those two being that productive at this time right now, it's best if you start, actually acquire weapons rather than working around it with defensive guys. Lamar Jackson, he can be a game manager all he wants, but if he's a game manager and he's able to take care of the ball when you have a wide receiver that knows he can make a play when it matters most, with Mike Evans, I'll take that any day of the week. So I got Mike Evans going to the Baltimore Ravens. And that'll do it, folks, for my NFL offseason rant video. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Thank you so much for joining the channel. If you can, please subscribe and like this video. I'm trying to reach at least 100 subscribers by the end of the year. It's obviously February, so I believe I can do it. Thank you so much. God bless, and as always, the NFL offseason is the most important offseason.